The first thing I saw when the storage door lifted was a mattress, thin, gray, and hidden behind plastic bins. Beside it sat water jugs, a dented hot plate, work boots, and Riley's electrical textbooks weighted down with a wrench. Then my granddaughter stepped from behind a shelf and froze. "Grandma?" Her voice carried more fear than surprise. I held the late payment notice that had arrived at my house that morning in an envelope addressed to Riley Mercer. The words "final notice" and "unit access subject to termination" told me it was not a mistake. I had driven across Albuquerque expecting abandoned furniture. Instead, I found my 20-year-old granddaughter living inside Unit 214. Riley looked thinner than she had at Easter. Her dark hair was tied back with wire insulation. Dust filled the lines of her hands. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I lifted the notice. "This came to my house." Her eyes went to the red stamp. She took the page and folded it smaller. That was when I noticed her phone charging from the hallway outlet. The mattress had no frame. A sweatshirt served as a pillow. Family photographs leaned against a bin, every picture facing the wall. "Riley, how long have you been sleeping here?" She gave me a tired smile. "I'm not sleeping here." I looked at the mattress. "I stay late sometimes." "There's a toothbrush in that cup." Her jaw tightened. After 29 years in emergency rooms, I knew dehydration, exhaustion, and practiced denial. But Riley was not a patient, and I had already failed to understand her. "Let me see your hands." "No," I said, "I'm fine." Her voice cracked. The old version of me would have pushed. Instead, I lowered my hands. "All right. I won't touch you." She turned away, but I saw dark pressure marks around both wrists from hauling cable and forcing conduit through tight spaces. Her hands trembled when she reached for water. She took one swallow and capped the bottle. "Where's your inhaler?" Her shoulders stiffened. "It ran out." "When?" "A few days ago." "Why didn't you refill it?" "I'm handling it." "By staying in a storage unit with no ventilation?" "I chose this." She said it too quickly. Behind her was a yellow notice: occupancy prohibited. One more violation could leave the unit locked with everything she owned inside. "Does your mother know?" Riley laughed without humor. "Mom knows whatever Grant tells her." For 3 months, Tessa had told me Riley was reckless. She said Riley had quit counseling, taken money, and disappeared after Grant tried to enforce reasonable rules. I had believed enough of it to stay away. Worse, I had defended him. Riley had called me after an argument over her paycheck. Grant wanted it deposited into a family account because he was helping manage her expenses. Riley said he was controlling everything. I told her households required cooperation. I told her not to confuse boundaries with abuse. Now she stood beside a hidden mattress. "I was wrong," I said. She looked at me as though waiting for an excuse. "There was none. I was wrong about Grant, and I was wrong not to believe you." Her face did not soften. "I had no right to expect it to. You talked to Mom for 11 minutes, she said. Then you decided I was lying." "I know. You didn't call me back." "I know. She said you agreed I needed consequences." "I did." A truck shifted gears beyond the fence, and the sound echoed through the metal corridor. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," I said. "I'm asking you to leave before they lock you out or you collapse from the heat." "I can't go with you." "Why?" "Because you'll call Mom." "I won't." "You'll call Grant." "Not without your permission." She studied me, then checked both directions down the corridor. "He changed the lock 17 days ago." "What do you mean?" "When I got home from class, my key didn't work. My clothes were in trash bags beside the garage." "And your mother?" "She was watching through the window." Riley said it without tears. "That made it worse. Grant told everyone I ran away after stealing from his company. He said if I came back, he'd call the police." "Did you take anything?" "My own tools. The ones Dad bought me." Her father had been gone 6 years. He had left her an education trust for college or trade training. I had been named backup trust protector. At the time, the title sounded ceremonial. Grant handled the statements. Tessa signed the paperwork. I received annual summaries and filed them away unopened because I trusted my daughter. That carelessness now sat in front of me as a mattress behind plastic bins. We can move your things tonight, I said. Riley shook her head. If he finds out I'm with you, he'll call the apprenticeship office. For what? He says he can prove I'm unstable. Marcus warned me there can't be another complaint. Another complaint? Grant told them I was stealing medication from home care clients. There was no evidence, but the program put a note in my file while they checked. Anger moved through me so fast I felt it in my fingertips. I'm going to his house. Riley grabbed my forearm and flinched. No. That's what he wants. I forced myself to stay still. He controls my phone plan. My checking account is linked to his. The truck title is in his company's name even though my paychecks covered it. He has my apprenticeship forms and tax records. What about the trust? Her eyes shifted away. He says there's almost nothing left. How much should be there? I don't know. He stopped showing me statements 2 years ago. I remembered the trust documents from her father's funeral. One clause required notice to the backup protector before anyone could claim Riley was unable to manage her own funds. No notice had ever reached me. We leave quietly, I said. We photograph everything, take what you need, and do not tell Grant where you are until we understand what he's done. For the first time, uncertainty replaced fear in her expression. You'd really wait? Every instinct in me wanted to confront him that night. But my anger had failed Riley once. This time it would serve her instead of satisfying me. Yes. I'll wait. She unplugged her phone and opened a folder hidden behind a calculator app. There's something else. She showed me a photograph of a printed document. The page was tilted and shadowed, taken in a hurry. At the top was the name of Riley's trust. Below it, Grant described her as financially irresponsible, emotionally volatile, and incapable of understanding ordinary transactions. He requested temporary authority over all remaining assets until a professional evaluation could be completed. At the bottom was a blank line for my signature. Riley enlarged the final paragraph. He left this on the printer last week, she whispered. Grandma, he isn't just trying to keep my money. She looked up at me. He's trying to make sure nobody believes I'm capable of owning it. By the time we left the storage facility, the sun had dropped behind the Sandia Mountains, but the pavement still held the day's heat. Riley sat beside me with one duffel bag and her tool case across her knees. Everything else she owned was under a tarp in my SUV. She kept checking the mirror for Grant's truck. I did not take her home. That was the first promise I kept. Marcus Hill, Riley's apprenticeship supervisor, met us outside a faded extended-stay hotel near the interstate. The program keeps 2 rooms here for apprentices between housing placements, he said. Grant Mercer's name isn't on the paperwork. He gave Riley a key card and a grocery bag. The room smelled of bleach. But it had a real bed and a lock. Before I left, Riley made me repeat that I would not call Tessa, confront Grant, or reveal where she was staying. Only after the 3rd promise did she let me go. At home, I spread the evidence across my kitchen table, the petition draft, the storage notice, strange transfers, and Grant's warning that refusing financial supervision would be documented as instability. At 1 in the morning, I found Tessa's invitation to Sunday brunch. Grant wants everyone together. We need to discuss Riley, I answered. I'll be there. Grant lived in a West Side development of pale stucco houses and gravel yards. His artificial lawn was trimmed with obsessive precision. He opened the door before I rang. Nora. I'm glad you came. Tessa's been worried sick. The table was set with white plates and fruit arranged by color. Grant's specialty was making control look like care. Owen sat at one end, checking Grant's face before speaking. Tessa hugged me too tightly. Have you heard from Riley? No, it was the first deliberate lie I told my daughter. Grant pulled out my chair. We were afraid she might contact you. She knows you have a soft heart. What exactly happened? He began with concern. That was what made him convincing. He said Riley had become unpredictable, hidden bills, and accused everyone of taking her money. Then $840 disappeared from his company's petty cash. Who had access? Several employees. Riley included. Was there video? Not in that office. Police report. We were trying to protect her future. He placed a gray folder on the table, inside were screenshots. In one, Riley wrote, "I can't keep doing this." In another, "I took what was mine." Separated from context, the words looked ugly. Grant added an expense summary listing vehicle payments, counseling, housing, food, and behavioral support. The total claimed they had spent more than $34,000 on Riley. "We tried everything," Tessa said. "What does behavioral support mean?" "Budget coaching. Crisis management," Grant answered. He handed me a letter from counselor Dana Whitcomb. It described Riley as impulsive, paranoid about money, and in need of temporary financial control. The letter was dated August 12. Did Dana meet with Riley that day? Grant buttered toast. She had several sessions. That wasn't my question. His knife stopped. Tessa glanced at him. "Yes," he said. That was one of their final sessions. 3 days earlier, Riley had shown me her apprenticeship records. On August 12, she worked a 10-hour installation in Santa Fe. Marcus signed her in before 6 and out after 4. Dana's letter described a 90-minute Albuquerque session beginning at 2. Another screenshot showed Riley threatening to take everything apart if Grant touched her account again. Its timestamp was 3:18 that afternoon. Grant claimed she sent it from home after counseling. She could not have been in either place. I stood to admire the family photographs and angled my phone toward the table, capturing the letter, expense summary, and screenshots. When I sat again, Grant had moved the folder closer. Riley said her paycheck went into a joint account. For convenience. Whose? For the household. She lived here and used a company-insured vehicle. She's 20. And 20-year-olds make destructive decisions every day. Owen's fork stopped, Grant noticed. Finish breakfast in the den. The boy left without argument. I waited until the television came on. Did you change the locks? Tessa's face lost color. Grant leaned back. Riley had become aggressive. We had to consider Owen's safety. What did she do? She created an unsafe environment. That isn't an answer. She yelled, Tessa said. She threw things. What things? Tessa looked at Grant. A lamp, he answered. Grant documented reimbursements down to the cent, yet had no photograph, receipt, or police report for the destruction used to justify making Riley homeless. After brunch, Tessa followed me outside. He did lock her out, she whispered. But it was supposed to be for one night. She has been gone 17 days. I know. Where did you think she was sleeping? With friends. Which friends? She looked toward the house. You don't understand what happens if Grant's company fails. The mortgage, Owen's school, the medical bills, everything is connected. He's under pressure. And that explains Riley. No. He's trying to keep this family from collapsing. There it was, not innocence. A bargain. Tessa had decided Riley was the part of the family they could afford to lose. The front door opened. Grant stepped onto the porch carrying my purse. You've been forgetting things lately, he said pleasantly. He handed it to me but held the strap for one extra second. Grief can affect concentration. Judgment too. Then he smiled. If Riley contacts you, be careful. She knows how to make older people feel responsible for rescuing her. I drove away without answering. At a gas station, I reviewed the photographs. One corner of the expense summary showed a bank logo and part of the trust account number. I called the bank, identified myself as backup trust protector, and asked for the department handling suspected beneficiary exploitation. After several transfers, a woman introduced herself as Elena Park. She asked for identification, the trust name, Riley's date of birth, and a secure way to receive documents. Her questions were precise. I sent the petition photograph, counselor's letter, Riley's time card, and account information. Then I returned to the hotel. Riley sat beside the vending machines in work pants, eating crackers because she was saving the sandwich for morning. I bought 2 cups of soup and sat beside her. Did Mom defend him? She asked. Yes. She nodded as though confirming something she already knew. I told her about the false counseling date. I never met Dana alone, Riley said. Grant was in every appointment. My phone rang. Elena Park's name appeared on the screen. I stepped into the empty laundry room. Nora, I can't discuss every detail until your authority is verified, she said. But you need to understand the scale. How bad is it? Over 3 years, nearly $186,000 left Riley's trust. I leaned against a washing machine. The payments went to 3 vendors, Elena continued. On paper, they provide housing assistance, counseling coordination, and personal care management. And in reality, all 3 share mailing addresses, officers, or registration records with Grant Mercer's company. Through the window, I watched Riley eat soup beneath the vending machine light. Elena lowered her voice. This does not look like a family disagreement. No. It did not. Grant had not merely told everyone that Riley was unstable and expensive, he had built the paperwork to make those lies profitable. The next morning, Elena sent a secure link containing 3 years of statements. Riley and I opened them on the hotel room's small desk. The pages soon covered the bed and chair. The trust had originally held a little over $310,000. Riley's father intended it to cover education, transportation, and reasonable living expenses while she trained for a career. The current balance was below $124,000. Grant had not simply withdrawn the difference. Every payment carried a respectable label: housing stabilization, clinical coordination, transportation supervision, independent living instruction. The language looked legitimate until we checked Riley's apprenticeship calendar. This says I had counseling for 3 hours. She said, highlighting a date. I was wiring the community center that day. Can Marcus prove it? There are sign-in sheets, inspection logs, and photos. We marked it. Another invoice claimed overnight support while Riley stayed with me after dental surgery. Others charged for housing during months when Grant also took rent from her paycheck. Then we found monthly fees for the bedroom she had later been forbidden to use. The invoices promised private space, meals, laundry, internet, and transportation. Riley stared at one page. He took the door off that room for almost 2 months. Why? He said privacy was a privilege. I wrote beside the charge, no door, restricted access. Beneficiary also paid rent. One vendor, Mesa Path Consulting, had received more than $48,000 for educational guidance and career placement. Elena's research showed it belonged to Victor Sloan, Grant's former business partner. What did Mesa Path do for you? I asked. I've never heard of it. 6 placement packages supposedly carried Riley's approval. Her digital signature appeared on every authorization. That looks like mine, she said. Could you have signed them? Not like this. She leaned closer, then went still, unless they used the blank forms. I looked up. What blank forms? When Grant started managing the trust, he brought me signature pages without the rest attached. He said the bank required fresh authorizations for tuition and mileage. How many? I don't know. 10. Maybe 15. Did you sign in front of a notary? No. Some pages already had a notary stamp. Shame entered her face before she said another word. I was 19. I should have known. You signed documents presented by an adult you trusted. That does not make you responsible for what he attached to them. I defended him. Her voice hardened. When Aunt Melissa said he controlled too much, I told her he was keeping us together. After Dad died, Grant paid for the funeral, dealt with the insurance company, and got the landlord to stop calling. I thought he saved us. I understood because I had believed the same thing. Tessa had been drowning in debt and grief. Grant arrived with a cashier's check and handled every difficult conversation. I had mistaken taking control for taking responsibility. I trusted him because of that funeral too, I said. I told myself a man who stepped in during the worst week of our lives must be safe. Riley looked down at the statements. He reminds Mom about it whenever she disagrees with him. I should have noticed sooner. So should I. No. We are not going to compete over who should have recognized him first. For the first time since the storage unit, she almost smiled. Then what do we do? Not what was I going to do for her. What were we going to do together? I called Elena on speakerphone. She explained that the bank could begin a confidential fraud assessment, but I had to formally activate my authority as backup trust protector. The agreement requires written notice of suspected misuse, she said. You must request a full accounting and preservation of all records. Will Grant know? Once accepted, yes. Possibly within 1 business day. Elena sent the trust agreement. I printed all 63 pages in the hotel lobby, and Riley and I read every clause. Near the middle, we found the reason Grant had been building a record of instability. If 2 qualified professionals certified that Riley could not understand ordinary financial decisions, her access could be temporarily suspended. The acting trustee could then approve expenses while seeking longer control. Grant already had Dana Whitcomb's evaluation. He needed one more. My doctor is through his company's insurance, Riley said. The room went quiet. Elena told us not to confront anyone. The bank would preserve electronic records before Grant received notice. While I completed the request, Riley called Marcus. He arrived after work carrying a file box and laptop. These are her payroll summaries, he said. The direct deposit instructions changed 14 months ago. The original account ended in Riley's 4 digits, the replacement was a household account Grant managed. Did Riley authorize it? I asked. Marcus opened the electronic form. The request had been submitted from an office computer belonging to Grant's home care company. I never saw that, Riley said. Marcus also brought attendance logs, job site photographs, instructor reports, and mileage records. Together, they contradicted 11 counseling and supervision invoices. I can preserve more, he said. But the apprenticeship board will protect the program first. If this becomes a public family fight, Riley could be suspended until they understand what happened. I'm not asking you to take sides, Riley said. I'm asking you to protect the records. Marcus nodded. That I can do. He arranged a private training room for the next morning so Riley could record a detailed statement while the dates were fresh. That night, I drove home to find the original trust binder. It sat inside a metal cabinet in my late husband's workshop. Behind the agreement and old statements was a sealed envelope bearing my name. The handwriting belonged to Riley's father. Nora, I hope this document remains unnecessary. Tessa loves Riley, but fear makes people surrender decisions they should protect. If pressure ever surrounds this money, please ask questions before peace in the family becomes more important than Riley's future. I sat on the workshop floor and read it twice. He had understood my weakness. It was not only my temper, it was my fear of conflict with Tessa. For years, I had accepted peace at the price of questions. Grant used that silence as room to work. The next morning, Riley recorded her statement at the apprenticeship center. She described the blank forms, diverted wages, missing statements, fake appointments, removed bedroom door, and the day her key stopped working. She corrected herself when uncertain and refused to exaggerate. I watched through the glass while Elena listened remotely and Marcus documented the time. Riley did not look rescued when she finished. She looked exhausted, frightened, and determined. I signed the notice invoking my review authority. Elena confirmed the bank had opened a confidential assessment and frozen new discretionary transfers pending verification. For the first time, Grant's control over the trust had met something stronger than an argument, a process he could not charm. Riley and I were comparing the final payroll records when a white SUV stopped outside. Grant stepped out wearing a navy suit despite the heat, a leather folder beneath one arm. A Bernalillo County Sheriff's deputy exited from the driver's side. Marcus moved toward the entrance, but the deputy had already seen us through the glass. Grant did not look angry, he looked prepared. The deputy entered and asked for me by name, then he handed me an emergency petition. Grant claimed I had abducted Riley, isolated her from her family, manipulated her grief, and attempted to seize control of her inheritance. At the bottom of the first page, under immediate protective relief requested, he had added one more accusation: financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The accusation was written in calm legal language, which made it more dangerous. The deputy did not arrest me. He explained that Grant had filed an emergency petition and a judge would review temporary restrictions that afternoon. Riley stepped beside me. I'm not vulnerable, and she didn't abduct me. You're an adult, Ms. Mercer, the deputy said. No one is ordering you to leave with your stepfather. But the court can restrict contact while the financial allegations are reviewed. Grant had not brought law enforcement to take Riley home, he had brought a witness to the moment he turned me into the threat. The hearing took place by video from a courthouse conference room. Grant sat beside his attorney, Caleb Dorsey. Tessa appeared behind them without looking at the camera. Grant's story was careful, he did not call me a thief. He said he feared I was becoming one. He described a grieving widow whose judgment had deteriorated after her husband's death. He said I had always struggled with anger, had recently become obsessed with Riley's trust, and had removed her from stable housing without consulting her mother. Stable housing, I pictured the mattress behind plastic bins. Caleb submitted photographs of my SUV outside the storage facility and hotel. He submitted my request to freeze discretionary transfers. Then he played a recording. My voice filled the room. If you use that girl's money again, I will tear apart everything you built. The words came from an argument 11 months earlier, when Grant pressured Riley to quit the apprenticeship and work in his office. I remembered him speaking softly while I grew louder. The recording included my anger. It did not include the 20 minutes before he pressed record. Caleb played another clip. I don't care what it costs. I'll take Riley away from all of you before I let you control her. That one was 3 years old. The judge asked if the recordings were authentic. I could have argued about context. Instead, I said, that is my voice. Then she asked why I had not reported exploitation earlier, because I accepted explanations that were easier for the family. So your belief changed after locating Riley? Yes. And within 48 hours, you attempted to restrict a trust holding more than $100,000. I invoked a review provision. I did not request the money for myself. Caleb leaned toward his microphone. Nora Vale concealed Riley's location, contacted her employer, gathered financial records, and placed herself between Riley and every member of her immediate family. Each statement contained enough truth to survive a rushed hearing. The judge refused Grant's request to place Riley under his control. Riley was 20, employed, and clearly said she would not return to his house, but the judge issued a temporary no-contact order between Riley and me while the claims were reviewed. I could not call, text, visit, send messages through another person, or participate in trust decisions involving her. The order would last 9 days unless modified. 9 days sounded small until I saw Riley's face. She had spent years learning that adults disappeared when Grant applied pressure. Now I had helped create another disappearance. As the hearing ended, she looked at me through the screen. I wanted to tell her I was not leaving. I was legally forbidden to say it. Marcus arranged for Riley to remain in the apprenticeship housing program. The program assigned a coordinator and confirmed that the placement was Riley's own decision. Outside the courthouse, Grant spoke to a neighborhood reporter. He never mentioned the trust. He said his family was facing a painful private crisis involving an elderly relative experiencing unresolved bereavement. By evening, relatives began calling me. A cousin asked whether I had stopped taking medication. My sister-in-law wanted to know why I was stealing Riley's inheritance. 2 former hospital co-workers received an email saying Grant's family hoped I would seek help before grief caused permanent harm. He sent similar language to the nonprofit board where he served as treasurer. Nothing was openly defamatory. Everything made my evidence look like a symptom. I typed 3 responses and deleted them. Then I put my truck keys in the kitchen drawer. The road to Grant's house was 23 minutes long. I knew because I had driven it angry too many times. If I went there, he would call the sheriff. If I asked someone to contact Riley, I would violate the order. If I published the records, I could damage Elena's review and Riley's apprenticeship. For once, my anger had nowhere to go. The next morning, I hired a trust attorney named Vivian Cole. Her retainer consumed most of the savings I had set aside for a new roof. Vivian read the petition, listened to the recordings, and asked, "Are there more examples of you threatening him or contacting institutions without Riley's written permission?" I wanted to defend myself. Instead, I gave her every text, voicemail, email, and note. Some helped me. Others did not. One message called Grant a parasite. Another said I would make sure his company never recovered if he touched Riley's trust. You can be right about the fraud and still be reckless in how you responded, Vivian said. I know. Do you? I looked at the truck keys inside the drawer. Yes. She prepared a motion allowing Elena to continue the bank investigation independently. Until the court ruled, Elena could preserve records and perform her duties, but she could not share findings with me. I had started the review, now I had to trust a process I could not control. Riley's days reached me only through formal updates from Marcus and the court coordinator. She attended work, completed classes, and stayed in program housing. She also received messages from Grant. Vivian obtained copies because Riley submitted them through her own legal aid counselor. Grant offered to restore tuition payments, release the truck title, and stop challenging her apprenticeship if she signed a statement saying I had pressured her to make false accusations. He also offered supervised visits with Owen. The final line read, "Your brother is asking why you abandoned him." Tessa called Riley the following night. According to the coordinator's notes, Tessa said the bank freeze could destroy Grant's refinancing, trigger foreclosure, and force Owen out of his school. She did not deny the false invoices. She asked Riley to consider what truth would cost everyone else. Riley did not sign the statement. She also did not sleep that night. On the sixth day, Grant appeared in a televised segment promoting his company's charity partnership with a senior meal program. I watched without sound. He stood inside a bright kitchen, sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows, packing meals beneath a banner about dignity, trust, and protecting vulnerable people at home. The interviewer smiled. Grant smiled back. Across town, Riley watched the same interview in the housing common room. Marcus later said she muted it, finished her apprenticeship worksheet, and moved where she could not see the screen. The next hearing was 3 days away. Vivian believed we could defeat the allegation against me. Proving the larger fraud would take longer. Grant does not need to win forever, she said. He only needs enough time to make Riley doubt the cost of opposing him. That evening, Vivian called with a warning. Grant's attorney had requested that Dana Whitcomb perform another evaluation of Riley and proposed a second professional connected to Grant's insurance network. The two-certification clause was no longer a possibility. It was his next move. I sat at my kitchen table with Riley's father's letter beside me and did nothing. No calls, no drive across town, no angry message Grant could play in court. At 10:17, Marcus forwarded an evidence notice from Riley's legal aid counselor. Attached was a screenshot from Owen's phone, because I could not receive messages from Riley directly. Vivian showed it to me as part of the case file. Owen had written one sentence. "I think he is getting rid of your proof." Below it was a photograph taken through a bedroom window. Grant stood in the backyard beside a metal fire pit. Orange flames rose above the rim. In his hands was the corner of a banker's box bearing the logo of his home care company. 3 more boxes waited beside his feet. The photograph did not prove what was inside the boxes. It proved Grant believed something needed to disappear. Vivian sent the image to Elena and Riley's legal aid counselor, then warned us not to turn Owen into an investigator. He is 13. He does not search files, take documents, or go near that fire. Riley was allowed to send him one message through her counselor: do not touch anything. Do not confront Grant. Stay safe and tell mom or another adult you trust. The next morning, Vivian obtained an order requiring Grant to preserve financial, clinical, payroll, and electronic records connected to Riley's trust. Some paper had already burned. The electronic trail had not. Elena explained that every trust payment required supporting records uploaded through the bank's secure portal. Deleting office files could not erase those copies. He spent 3 years submitting his own evidence, she said. The archives described Riley as unable to shop alone while job site photographs placed her on ladders installing conduit. Transportation charges conflicted with Marcus's mileage logs. Counseling summaries repeated identical sentences and the same spelling error. One form claimed Riley became confused when counting change. That afternoon, she had passed an electrical code exam involving measurements, algebra, and load calculations. The assessment widened. Vivian challenged Dana Whitcomb's incapacity evaluation. Dana's report claimed she interviewed Riley in person at Grant's office. Building access records showed Dana never entered that day. Her calendar listed a phone consultation with Grant, not Riley. She had written an evaluation about a woman she never interviewed. Grant still had a second evaluator scheduled. Vivian sent him the discrepancy before the appointment. He withdrew until the first report could be verified. The 2 certification plans stopped 1 signature short. Then Elena found names outside our family. Grant's company had billed elderly clients for overnight supervision, medication reminders, and home visits that staff schedules could not support. 2 clients were hospitalized on dates when the company claimed workers served them at home. The bank referred those records to the state licensing division. Investigators began calling former employees and clients. Quietly. No raid. No television cameras. Grant continued attending board meetings while people he had never noticed compared his dates. The no-contact order expired on the 9th day. The judge refused to extend it after Riley testified that I had not pressured her to leave Grant's home or surrender the trust. The court did not clear every accusation, but I could speak to Riley again. I found her at the apprenticeship center repairing a training panel. When she restored power, one connection ran hotter than the others. A hidden fault always leaves heat somewhere, she said. You follow the heat. I knew she meant the panel. I also knew she did not. I wanted to hug her, but waited. She crossed the room and hugged me first. I thought he made you disappear too. He tried. You stayed quiet. It nearly killed me. That earned a small laugh. Thank you for not making it worse, she said. It was not forgiveness for every time I failed her, it was trust for one decision. That evening, Tessa called from an unfamiliar number and asked to meet at a coffee shop. She looked exhausted. Grant says you're destroying the company. I'm finding out where Riley's money went. If the company collapses, employees lose jobs and clients lose care. That does not turn stolen money into a loan. Her hands tightened around her cup. I signed some approvals. I let the silence sit. She said the company began losing contracts 2 years earlier. Grant told her Riley's trust could temporarily cover connected vendors because the household had already provided Riley with housing, transportation, and support. He promised to replace it after refinancing. How much did you know? Not $186,000. That wasn't my question. Tessa stared at the table. I knew the vendors were connected to him. I knew some descriptions were exaggerated. Did you know Riley signed blank pages? Yes. Did you know he used them? I didn't ask. Anger rose in me, but it no longer chose my next sentence. Why tell me now? Because he's changing records. Owen is scared. And Grant says once the refinance closes, none of this will matter. It will matter to Riley. I know. No. You know it may cost you the house. That isn't the same thing. Tessa began crying. Will she forgive me? I will not promise you that. I'm your daughter. And she is yours. Then she told me about the household laptop. It belonged to both her and Grant, and she used it for bills and bookkeeping. Vivian confirmed she could provide material she lawfully controlled. No guest passwords or private accounts. 2 nights later, Grant hosted a neighborhood fundraiser downstairs. While he thanked donors for helping seniors remain safely at home, Tessa sat upstairs copying files from the shared laptop onto a drive Vivian provided, invoice templates, vendor spreadsheets, draft letters describing Riley as unstable months before the lockout. Emails discussing the remaining trust balance as support for a company refinance. One message from Grant to Victor Sloan said the trust needed to remain above $100,000 until final lender verification. That explained why he had not emptied it. The money left in Riley's name was not mercy, it was collateral. The refinance files showed Grant would have to certify the vendor revenue, beneficiary authorization, and absence of any material investigation. Vivian first wanted the lender to cancel. Elena advised patience. If the meeting died early, Grant could blame incomplete paperwork. If it continued, he would certify information after preservation notices and formal challenges already existed. Riley made the decision. Let him answer the questions, she said. Don't warn him which answers we can prove are false. Vivian sent the lender every notice legally required. We did not confront Grant. For the first time, our silence was strategy. Then Grant offered a settlement. his voicemail arrived while I stood beside my late husband's unopened toolbox. "Nora, this has gone too far. I will restore $60,000 to Riley's trust immediately. You will withdraw the fraud allegation, state publicly that this was a family misunderstanding, and stop interfering with the refinance. Riley's tuition will be paid by Friday. $60,000 could finish her apprenticeship and secure an apartment." I played the message 3 times. Partial relief can feel like rescue when the whole truth is expensive. I called Riley. "I need you to hear this before I decide how I feel." When the message ended, she was quiet. "I need tuition this month." "I know. And he knows." "Yes. If we accept, he keeps the rest. And we help him call the theft a misunderstanding." Riley exhaled. "He's offering to return part of my money if we help him prove he didn't take it." The temptation disappeared. "We reject it," I said. "No. First Vivian saves it. Then we reject it. Partners, not rescuer and victim." Vivian preserved the voicemail and replied that no public statement would be exchanged for partial restitution. The next day, Tessa met Riley with her legal aid counselor present and turned over the drive. "I thought I was protecting everyone," Tessa said. "You protected the version of the family where I stayed quiet," Riley answered. "I'm trying to fix it. Helping now does not erase years of silence." "I know. You always know after someone forces you to look." Riley did not comfort her, but she allowed the counselor to accept the files. That was not reconciliation, it was cooperation with boundaries. By week's end, licensing investigators had confirmed 5 suspicious client bills. Elena authenticated records Grant tried to destroy, while Vivian challenged the incapacity report and trust authorization. Everything pointed toward the lender's final verification meeting on Friday. We believed we had 3 days to organize the evidence. At 4:36 Tuesday afternoon, Vivian called. Grant's attorney learned regulators contacted a former nurse. "What does that change?" "He knows there's an investigation. He told the lender this is a family harassment campaign and requested an accelerated closing." "How accelerated?" "The meeting is no longer Friday." Vivian's next words removed every hour we thought we had. "It has been moved to tomorrow morning." Vivian called at dawn. The lender's meeting would begin at 9 in Grant's nonprofit boardroom. Because the refinance listed Riley's trust as collateral. Vivian challenged the pledge. "That was the only reason I was invited, not as Riley's grandmother, as the backup trust protector Grant had tried to discredit." A screen in the boardroom displayed final collateral verification. Grant arrived in the navy suit he had worn when he brought the deputy to Riley's apprenticeship center. He greeted the lender representatives as if the accelerated meeting were his idea. Then Riley entered with her legal aid counselor. Tessa sat beside Vivian instead of Grant. Elena joined by secure video. The lead lender, Marisol Bennett, began. "We are determining whether the collateral, represented income, and beneficiary authorization satisfy closing conditions." "They do," Grant said. "This is a family conflict exaggerated by Nora Vale." Marisol stopped him. "You will respond after each issue." Grant smoothed the first page before him as his explanations began to fail. Elena displayed 3 years of trust withdrawals. Nearly $186,000 had gone to 3 vendors Grant described as independent providers of housing, counseling, and personal care services. Marisol asked, "Were these companies independent from Mercer Home Support?" "Yes." Elena changed the screen. Mesa Path Consulting belonged to Grant's former partner. Desert Bridge Coordination used his building. Southwest Family Housing used a mailbox rented by his finance manager. 3 vendors, 1 business network. Grant blamed a former bookkeeper. Elena displayed her termination date. She had left 6 months before the first disputed invoice. Vivian then uploaded files from the shared household laptop. One email told Tessa to replace family support with independent living services so the charges would count as vendor revenue. Another told Grant's former partner to keep descriptions broad enough to cover whatever Riley needs later. Grant looked at Tessa. "You distributed private company material." "It was our household laptop," she said. "You assigned me the bookkeeping." Marisol moved to the trust pledge. Did Riley voluntarily authorize the remaining balance as collateral? Yes. A scanned authorization appeared. Riley's signature sat at the bottom. Marisol turned to her. Is that yours? It looks like mine, Riley said. I signed blank reimbursement pages because Grant said the bank needed them for tuition and mileage. I never saw this pledge. She is confused, Grant said. I know the difference between tuition reimbursement and pledging more than $100,000 to his company. Her counselor submitted copies of the blank pages. The paper and signature position matched the pledge. Grant blamed the trust administrator. Elena answered calmly, the administrator's credentials were not used. The file came from Mr. Mercer's company. Grant's hand stopped, then he turned toward me. Nora takes fragments, feeds them to Riley, and creates a story. I wanted to answer, but Vivian touched one finger to her legal pad. Wait, Marisol asked whether Riley received the services listed in the invoices. Absolutely, Grant said, including counseling on August 12 at 2 p.m. Yes. Marcus's records appeared. Riley had signed into a Santa Fe job site before 6 that morning. Logs and photographs placed her there until after 4. Grant claimed it had been a remote session. Dana Whitcomb's report specifically described an in-person appointment in Albuquerque. Building access records showed Dana never entered. Her calendar listed a telephone consultation with Grant, not Riley. Marisol asked, did the counselor personally examine Riley? You would need to ask her. We did, Vivian said. She withdrew the evaluation pending licensing review. Elena displayed housing charges for a private bedroom, meals, and supervision during months. Grant also deducted rent from Riley's wages. Photographs showed the bedroom door removed. Messages showed Riley asking for clothes after the locks were changed. Grant said she had become aggressive around Owen. Marisol asked for a police report, medical record, property claim, or photograph of the lamp Grant said Riley destroyed. There was none. Tessa's face went pale. The lamp was never broken, she said. Grant stared at her. He told relatives Riley threw one. He said people would understand the lockout if they believed Owen was afraid. You agreed she was dangerous, Grant said. I agreed to repeat what you told me. Because it was true. No, then Tessa looked at Riley. Grant ordered me to put your clothes outside. He changed the locks. He told me to say you stole money and ran away. Riley's jaw tightened. I knew you had not run away, Tessa continued. I told myself it would last one night. Then I helped him build the story because I was afraid the company would fail. Grant pushed his folder away. The company pays the mortgage. Employs 43 people, and supports clients who have nowhere else to go. Marisol asked whether it could meet payroll without the refinance. No, he admitted, 43 employees had not forged Riley's signature. Owen had not asked Grant to risk the house. Grant saw Riley hesitate. If this financing dies, employees lose jobs, clients lose caregivers, the house enters foreclosure, and Owen loses his home because Riley and Nora want punishment. Riley lowered her eyes. Marisol said, you are not required to respond. I want to. Riley looked up. I don't want employees to lose their jobs. I don't want Owen to lose his home. I also did not choose to finance this company. Grant opened his mouth. She continued, my father left that trust for my education and future. I want the false charges restored. I want my wages separated from Grant's accounts. I want the truck title reviewed. And I want no one signing my name or calling me incapable because I asked where my money went. No plea for sympathy. Only terms. Grant turned toward me. You coached that. No, he laughed once. You expect everyone to believe a grieving woman with a history of threats suddenly became patient enough to build a banking case. He placed my grief and temper on the table one last time. I kept my hands flat. You do not have to believe I am calm, I said. You only have to verify the records. Grant reminded the room that I had threatened to destroy his company. Vivian nodded. She did. We disclosed the recording and every communication that reflected poorly on her. The transactions do not depend on Nora's character. Marisol closed the refinance folder. This lender cannot rely on collateral subject to a beneficiary challenge, disputed authorization, connected vendor review, and active regulatory inquiry. We can correct documents after closing, Grant said. No. The closing is terminated. He stared at her, suspended. Terminated. A board member spoke. The executive committee met this morning. Effective immediately, Grant Mercer is suspended from financial authority pending an independent audit. No one applauded. Elena spoke through the screen. The bank has rejected the collateral pledge and frozen disputed trust transfers pending beneficiary in court instructions. 2 licensing investigators entered and served preservation orders for company billing, payroll, and client records. Grant looked toward the hallway, expecting handcuffs. None came. You are not under arrest, one investigator said. Formal interviews will follow. Destroying or altering records after service may create additional exposure. The page beneath his hand had wrinkled from being smoothed too many times. Marisol ended the meeting. At that moment, the air conditioning shut off, the hum disappeared. Leaving only chairs moving and folders closing, Grant's rescue package was dead. The investigations were not. Outside, Riley left with her counselor. Tessa stayed near the entrance, speaking to Vivian about Owen and the house. Grant followed me toward the parking lot. You're proud of this? I kept walking. 43 people may lose their jobs. My son may lose his home. Tessa will lose everything because you needed to prove you were right. I stopped beside my truck. His tie was still straight. His voice was not, you destroyed your own daughter's life. I looked back at the building where his signatures, invoices, and explanations had finally been placed beside one another. No, Grant. I opened the truck door. You built their security from money that was never yours. For a long time after that meeting, I kept hearing Grant's accusation, you destroyed your own daughter's life. The words followed me home, but the facts followed him. The lender's termination notice triggered reviews already waiting behind closed doors. The bank turned over authenticated trust records. Investigators compared Grant's invoices with hospital admissions, employee schedules, client statements, Riley's payroll history, and the false incapacity evaluation. Nothing happened quickly. Grant spent 2 weeks calling it a family dispute. Then a former nurse confirmed she had been scheduled at 2 homes simultaneously. Camera footage showed no caregiver arrived on nights Grant billed for supervision. Another family found charges for a month their father had spent in rehabilitation. Riley was no longer the only person whose money had been turned into paperwork. By the 7th week, prosecutors filed charges involving trust fraud, falsified records, redirected wages, and financial exploitation of multiple victims. Grant was not dragged away before cheering strangers. He reported with his attorney, entered a plea, and left under release conditions while the case continued. Justice was slower than rage. It was also harder for him to control. The court prohibited Grant from contacting Riley about money, housing, employment, or testimony. A temporary manager took control of Mercer Home Support. The state did not close the company overnight. Employees needed their paychecks, and legitimate clients still needed care. An outside administrator separated real services from false billing, kept most field staff, and canceled the connected vendor contracts. Grant had built the company around himself. It survived only after he was removed. The house did not. Without the refinance, the mortgage fell behind. Tessa and Owen packed while a real estate agent photographed the rooms. Tessa moved into a small apartment near Owen's school and began working full-time in a medical billing office. Financial consequences did not make her innocent. They made her responsible for a life Grant had once managed for her. Owen visited Riley through her counselor. He never carried messages from Grant, and Riley never asked him for evidence again. The first time they met, he apologized for photographing the fire. You helped, Riley said. But you should never have needed to. He began school counseling and slowly stopped checking every adult's expression before answering. Riley returned to her apprenticeship full-time. On her first morning back, she opened a checking account at a bank Grant had never used. No relative was listed. No household link. No emergency access. Then she deposited a paycheck that belonged only to her. The civil case moved faster than the criminal one. insurance coverage, restrained business funds, and the sale of Grant's ownership interest restored most of Riley's trust. Not all, legal fees and depleted assets left a permanent gap. The money could finish Riley's training and secure housing, but it could not return the years she spent doubting herself. When Elena closed the bank review, she gave the documents directly to Riley. I was in the room, but I did not touch the folder. For months, I had treated every record as mine to hold. Riley signed the receipt and decided where the documents would be stored. I was learning that protection could become another form of control if I never gave her room to choose. I began grief counseling on Tuesday afternoons. At first, I talked about Grant. My counselor kept asking about the calls I dismissed and the anger I used when listening required admitting I was wrong. I believed I was protecting family peace, I finally said. What did that peace cost? Riley. The answer did not become smaller because I regretted it. I learned to apologize without using guilt as a request for comfort. Rescuing someone after a crisis did not erase failing to hear them before it. Tessa tried to rebuild contact with Riley. She began with long messages explaining fear, debt, and Grant's pressure. Riley responded once, "I understand why you were afraid. I do not accept what you did because of it." After that, Tessa followed Riley's rules, one scheduled call each week. No surprise visits. No questions about the trust. No requests for money. No asking Owen to persuade her. Some calls lasted 20 minutes. Others ended after 3. Riley did not punish her mother. She also did not restore the access Tessa once treated as automatic. When prosecutors requested a victim impact statement, Riley carried the form for days. She worried writing it was cruel, then worried refusing would let Grant describe the damage for her. She finally wrote about sleeping in the storage unit, signing blank forms, losing wages, and being called incapable when she asked questions. She also wrote that employees and clients should not be abandoned for crimes they did not commit. Her final request was simple: every financial authority Grant claimed over her should be permanently removed. The criminal case was still pending when Riley completed her apprenticeship, but Grant's control over our lives had ended. He could no longer move her wages, pledge the trust, choose her housing, arrange evaluations, or control her story. That was the victory. Riley's completion ceremony was held in the Apprenticeship Center's training hall. Before it began, she asked whether Tessa should attend. "Do you want her there?" I asked. "I don't know." "You do not owe her an invitation." "I know." Riley allowed Tessa to come with Owen, but they sat several rows behind us. She was not ready to perform reconciliation for a room full of people. Marcus described her as precise, stubborn, and unusually calm during electrical faults. She laughed at the last part. Tessa remained behind us when Riley received her certificate. Afterward, Riley hugged Owen. Tessa waited. "I'm glad you came," Riley finally said. "Thank you for letting me." That was all. No perfect reunion. No promise everything would return to normal. Normal had been the problem. A month later, Riley signed her first independent lease. The apartment was small, with one bedroom, a balcony facing an alley, and an electrical panel she inspected before checking the kitchen. I brought her the old padlock from the storage unit. She stared at it. "I don't want that in my house." "Neither do I." I had mounted a copy of her lease inside a simple wooden frame. The padlock was fixed beneath it, closed around nothing. She hung it near the entryway, not as a reminder that she had once needed rescue, as proof that the door now belonged to her. We carried in dishes, a second-hand table, and the electrical textbooks she had once kept beside a mattress. I asked where she wanted everything. Sometimes she changed her mind. I did not correct her. When the final box was empty, I picked up my purse. "I'll let you settle in." Riley followed me to the door. "Grandma." She held out a key, for one frightened second. I thought she was asking me to watch over the apartment, the way Grant once claimed supervision was care. Then she closed my fingers around it. "This is not permission to come whenever you want." "I understand. You call first." "Every time." She studied my face, making sure I meant it, then she smiled. "I know you will." The key rested in my palm, small and ordinary. Riley was not giving it to me because she needed saving. She was giving it to me because she finally trusted me to enter only when invited.